Welcome to Books on Point. Rehana Rossouw's new book, Predator Politics, Mabuza, Fred Daniel and the Great Land Scam, is centered on Fred Daniel, a successful businessman who wanted to use his considerable wealth to pursue his passion for environmental conservation and community upliftment. Daniel experienced intimidation, threats of violence and harassment, and Mpumalanga officials started making it impossible for him to pursue his plans. For more on the book, we're joined by Rehana Rossouw. Rehana, thank you so much for your time. Let's, delve into what attracted you to the story.
Fred Daniel approached my publisher directly, thought that there would be a book in his story. My publisher agreed, and she asked whether I was interested in writing the book. I said yes, and I wrote it.
Let's get into the context of Mpumalanga and how it became, I suppose, for lack of a better description, the epicenter of corruption.
It did. Quite early into the new democracy in South Africa, Mpumalanga was one of the provinces with the earliest big corruption scams, which were started by politicians. There was corruption in almost every government department in Mpumalanga in the first democratic government in South Africa. Very few politicians were held to account. In fact, some of our most senior politicians who had started off corrupt in Mpumalanga went on to hold huge positions in the country.
Let's go into, who Fred Daniel is. I mean, in my intro, I briefly described him as somebody having considerable wealth and who had a vision, to pursue environmental projects in order to benefit the community. But what do we know about him and his vision for Mpumalanga in particular?
His vision started quite early as a child when one of his primary school teachers spoke to his class about climate change and the fact that the earth had finite resources and wouldn't be able to support the growing population of humans. What Fred heard in the 1970s turned out to be true. The entire world is now concerned about climate change. The entire world is concerned about how humans have degraded nature to the point that in some places nature can't heal itself. Fred, because of what he had learned as a child, decided when he had sold his IT business in the 1990s to invest all of his money in a piece of land so that he could teach South Africans how nature could restore itself after years of degradation.
Now, the one thing our viewers will notice the moment they see the book cover is that even though the story, talks about Fred Daniel with this amazing vision for Mpumalanga, on the front cover is none other than the Deputy President of South Africa, David Mabuza. And I'm sure a lot of people are wondering, how he relates to, Fred Daniel and this so-called Great Land Scam. Perhaps you can give us a little more detail on that.
So soon after Fred started buying up 89 farms in Mpumalanga on which to establish his private nature reserve and his project to teach South Africans about climate change and the history of the earth, David Mabuza became MEC for Land and Agriculture in Mpumalanga. And one of Fred's neighbors came to ask him for help, said that his community land project had been hijacked by politicians and businessmen who had put in new fake claims for land using the community trust. Fred investigated and discovered that politicians working with Afrikaner businessmen in southern Mpumalanga were defrauding the Land Claims Commission of millions of rands that was meant to be used for destitute black people who wanted to become farmers.
Now, this book, Rehana, I must mention that it was absolutely, fascinating and an eye-opener, but at the same time made me extremely angry in terms of the corruption that, continues to happen, particularly in Mpumalanga and in the past as well, and how it hampers on, being able to deliver services to ordinary people or even help people be able to pursue some of those business interests. As you put this book together and you heard Fred Daniel's story, what was the most, I suppose, staggering part of the entire affair?
For me, what was staggering is that he never gave up. Lots of other business people had been involved in tourism projects in Mpumalanga and had given up or had been driven out of the province. Fred never gave up. He stood his ground against the politicians who were trying to steal his project. He has brought over the past 15 years, he's brought several court cases against government officials and politicians and won every single one of it. The thing that impressed me the most was, despite what he had gone through, despite the threats, despite his fear that he and his family would be assassinated, he never gave up.
What is it that you want viewers or those who actually get a copy of the book? I suppose as we get into the holiday season, it's a perfect opportunity to be able to grab a copy. What is it that you want viewers to take away from the book?
Well, the big question is, will Didi Mabuza be the next president of South Africa? That is a question that is, I don't ask it directly in the book, but one can look at Didi Mabuza's actions and make their own determination. That's the first thing. And then the second thing is whether it's ever going to be possible for Fred to live his dream, to return to Mpumalanga and to get his project up again. What we want is the support of people who are against corruption, who will support him. His case is going back to the North Gauteng High Court in June next year, and he will require the support of South Africans who are determined to bring an end to politicians' impunity.
Rehana, thank you so much for your time. That is Rehana Rossouw talking to us about her new book titled Predator Politics, Mabuza, Fred Daniel and the Great Land Scam. That's it from me. I'll be back with the next episode of Books on Point. Goodbye.